Good afternoon. I hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. I'd like to welcome you to the State Collegiate Discussion Meet final round. My name is Michael McEwen, State Young Farmer Committee member from District 4. I will be acting as the program chair. The purpose of the Collegiate Discussion Meet contest is to bring college students together to talk about issues of concern in agriculture today. By doing so, our ideas are expressed and we become part of the solution to those problems facing agriculture. In addition, the Discussion Meet program gives college students interested in agriculture the opportunity to develop their communication skills and leadership talents. We'll be selecting the state winner from the contestants who qualified for this final round by advancing from the Collegiate Chapter competition and 2 preliminary rounds held earlier this morning. The judges for our discussion meet this afternoon are Joe Packard, State Young Farmer Committee member, Nancy Thalen, State P&E Committee member, and Bridget Moore, State Young Farmer Committee member. At this time, contestants, please take your position up front. Thank you. Our contestants for this afternoon are Alyssa Schuck, Bethany DeSilvis, thank you for the help there, Cody Christensen, Joe Kantz, Kylie Van Houten, and Michael Seja. For the courtesy of the contestants, please turn off all cell phones at this time. The discussion meet contest is a discussion, not a debate. The judging of the discussion is based on the contestants' delivery, analysis of the topic, problem-solving approach, and cooperative attitude in discussing with other contestants. My role as the moderator, in my role as the moderator, I will not attempt to control or direct this discussion. I will not intervene unless inappropriate remarks are made. With that in mind, the burden is on the competitors to moderate themselves and conduct themselves in a cooperative manner. Each contestant will be asked to stand in voluntary order and give a 30-second opening statement. Whew, that'd be long. The body of the discussion will follow, with the contestants remaining seated and freely discussing the topic for 20 minutes. Following the close of the body, we will have 1 minute of silence for the contestants to prepare their closing statement. The contestants will then stand, again in voluntary order, and give their 1 minute closing statement. The timekeeper will hold up signs to alert the contestants to the time remaining and to signal when time has run out. The topic for the discussion is, how can Farm Bureau at the collegiate, county, state, and or national level help address mental health issues within the agricultural community? Contestants, you may begin with your opening statements in voluntary order.
I think we can all agree that farmers are some of the toughest people we know. I mean, when we get a cut on our finger, we just take a rag and some electrical tape and just bandage it up. But what about the cuts that we can't necessarily see? What about the cuts in our brain that cause us to think in negative thoughts? I'm genuinely looking forward to this discussion today. I wish you all the best of luck.
Growing up on a small cash crop farm in Kent City, Michigan, there would be days that my father would come home just overall depressed, and as the years grew on, it just got worse. And so this topic is very near and dear to my heart, and I look forward to discussing this with you guys.
Good afternoon, honorable judges, guests, timekeeper, moderator, and fellow board. Today I just have to say, what a topic. This is something that I never dreamed of in my younger years to be a topic to be discussing. Why are farmers so depressed in this world? Why are we so downtrodden on ourselves when we are the backbone of the society and we are the backbone of our healthy food and cropping systems? I have to say, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Not that I've had any of my family members pass away. Thank you.
Mental health issues can really cripple an industry, especially an agricultural industry where You have to be so mentally tough with the changing of the seasons. I think it's very important that we attack this quickly, head on, and accurately. I look forward to discussing this with my fellow colleagues, and good luck to the rest of you.
Hi there, my name is Bethany, with an increase in agricultural processes and an increased mental health awareness overall, we have learned that farmers are heavily affected with their mental health, and we know that due to unknown market fluctuations, regular stress of daily life, and even familial expectations can create kind of a disconnect between farmers and their own mental health. So it's our responsibility to discuss those solutions and try and find a viable way that these farmers can actually receive help should they need it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alyssa. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to this conversation just like the rest of the students on this panel today. Psychology has always been something that is of interest to me personally. I think that Farm Bureau has an opportunity here to make a great difference in the lives of the community, of the people that they try to impact daily. I think that there are a lot of challenges, but there's also a great deal for solutions because this is something that's a new.
You may now begin your discussion.
Bethany, you had stated that farmers are disconnected. I agree with that statement. Do you have any ideas on how Farm Bureau could get farmers more connected to each other or even with their families?
In my opinion, I think it just comes down to making sure that we're listening and looking for the social cues that many people who oftentimes need help or want help do give. That's another thing with mental health awareness is they want everyone to kind of make it their job and their responsibility to make sure that their peers are okay. And as Farm Bureau serving the farmers, it is important to make sure that we are checking on our farmers and making sure that not monetarily only, but that mentally and physically those farms are still running well. John, did you have anything to add?
With that kind of statement, I kind of feel like to add Farm Bureau into this, through their different functions such as this, I feel like it really brings farmers together, as well as many different Farm Bureau and other corporations bring farmers together for different ag days and such throughout the year. I believe this is a helpful tool. I don't believe mental health really is ever a prevalent issue that ever comes up in any of their meetings there, but I feel like if it became something more and something more easily able to talk about, if it could be something that could be on the table to talk about, and if you had somebody at a meeting per se, not every meeting, but just some high-ranking person that they can talk to that they feel comfortable with, because let's just say agricultural people generally have a very long history of keeping to themselves. It's something about pride, something about how they live, it's just what they do.
I completely agree with you, John. I understand that mental health may be a taboo subject to talk about in the agricultural community and really in society in general. It's just a taboo topic. It's not something that people want to bring forward. It's something that they want to worry about themselves and not try to figure out solutions. And Kylie, you mentioned something about if this keeps on going on, if they don't get the help they need, that's just going to be a snowball effect, and they're going to be it's going to be a downfall for them, and it will end up taking the best of them. How can you elaborate on that?
I guess I've kind of seen it personally with my dad. I remember coming home as a kid, and he comes out of the field just sad, and especially with this year, how hard it's been and how wet it's been. It's just really, really hard on him, and I know he's not the only one, so I think that we just need to reach out to farmers to understand how they're feeling and just give them someone to talk to about their feelings.
So Farm Bureau did, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Farm Bureau did a study recently asking farmers how they felt about certain situations and kind of what brought worries to their table. How many farmers worried about money? How many farmers worried about relationships with their spouses and with their children because of their mental health? And I know that Michigan State has a program where you can reach out and get mental health. And I think that it provides an opportunity for Farm Bureau and for Michigan State's program to kind of come together and figure out what they would do with this information. So a survey was conducted and information was received, and now I think it's up to us to try to figure out what to do with that information. I know that there are local and national hotlines that you can call, but how do we get farmers to realize that it's okay to ask for help? I know a lot of men come home and they say, oh, I'm fine. Or a lot of women will come home and they'll tear through the house and do the dishes and clean everything. So how can we open that conversation to make it acceptable for people to have feelings, and how do we effectively help them?
I really appreciate that you're bringing up an organization that is existing right now. It's quite a challenge to create a whole new organization to specifically focus on mental health in rural communities. But reaching out to organizations such as the Michigan Organization of Counselors and creating a partnership between Michigan Farm Bureau and them to help them understand what the mindset is of a farmer, what is their stressors, what is it that gets them going and gets them in that dark mindset. And this isn't something that we have to reinvent the wheel on. It's something that we can use things right now that are existing to help this cause.
I like that you bring up mindset, because the way I see it, I see in I'm friends with a lot of farmers. I come from a very rural and agricultural background, and with most farmers I feel as if the biggest stressor in their life is their generational farms. That being said, I feel like there's a sense of pride there, something that really gets their soul going. It's just something that's near and dear to their heart, and then when they see that they can't take care of their farm anymore if they're unable or unfit to do something, they see it as just the end. They don't see any kind of future past that. So I feel as if that is just something that's so off limits to talk about for farmers that it's just something that's not even on the table. So I feel like instead of, say, looking at just the mental side of it, we need to know what they're thinking before you move into, per se, getting help.
And I think going off of that, catching like signs of depression and stuff early, because depression eventually does lead to suicide in some cases. So I think if we catch it early enough with some of these farmers, that in the long run it'll help everybody.
Cody, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. So statistically, the nation, we're looking at 17.3 people per 100,000 commit suicide as of farmers, and we're talking about a crisis here that's 4 times higher than the general population. So, I mean, we're really talking about what we can do now, what we're doing now, and what we can do in the future. But we need to talk about how we can improve what we're doing now to make the future better. I think we're kind of close with it, but we're not quite there where we're at. I'm just interested to hear some other policies that we can implement.
I feel like right now, I think all of us were required to take a health class sometime in high school. For me, it was my freshman year of high school, and while we learned about proper nutrition and physical well-being, we also learned some little tidbits about mental health and learning what is depression, what is anxiety. But statistically speaking, in America, less than 12% of farmers, people that grow up on farms, even go up to high school. I mean, about 12% drop out before high school even gets over with. So they're not exposed to those requirements of being educated about their not good, yet alone physical health, but their mental health as well.
So, Michael, you're saying basically that the farmers are almost cut off from the services that are already provided because they're usually not in those situations where those services are easily accessible. They may be working long hours, they may not be going to the school, they may not have time or finances to get to those specific workshops, locations, or educational meetings. So in terms of trying to use what we have existing already, like you mentioned earlier, is there a program or is there even, like a fund or a grant or anything for farmers who may not have even learned about mental health at all in school?
Canada, they have a foundation called the Do More Foundation. It is an organization that provides funds for research, training, sense of community in Canadian farmers. They reach out and they help each other to recognize that they're not the only ones that are dealing with their specific stress, or they're not the only ones that are dealing with depression overall. So being able to have Michigan Farm Bureau or American Farm Bureau Federation create some sort of foundation such as the Do More Foundation that feeds into research, that feeds into education, feeds into overall solutions for this problem would be something that could prove to be substantially beneficial.
I like where we're going with this. I like how we're talking about different solutions in this way. And it's kind of bringing up the question for me, if our older generations, because the average age of a farmer is 60 plus, does it fall back on us as the younger generation that knows about these different cues and knows or has the education to spot different depression or different things that farmers might be going through? Does it fall back on us to be the people to step up and actually step in when we see a problem?
I think that the big problem today is trade tariffs. A lot of farms are going under because none of the farms have money. All of their loans from the banks are not getting renewed. I think that that's a really big issue. So instead of trying to fix the problem, how can Farm Bureau step in? The question states on a county, state, and or national level. How can we all work together to maybe set a crop so that one family or one farm is making a crop, and maybe we send it to another part of the country so that each farmer is helping another farmer's back. I know that there are 17 farming communities in the state of Michigan alone. How many of those farming communities need help? And is there another farming community that might be able to reach out a hand to scratch a back? I think that trying to bring down the level is a key factor in how we can start to help one another.
So instead of addressing maybe mental health overall and like maybe the negative side effects of it, maybe you suggest kind of going to the source of the pain and the stress.
Absolutely.
And trying to alleviate some of that, and while also still working on education and outreach and still helping with the many problems that they tend to face.
Yeah, I think that Farm Bureau has a lot of resources in a lot of different communities. So how can we cross those bridges so that everybody is working together? Absolutely.
Yes.
I think the best way to do that is through all of their different work with Congress. Through anything we do with Michigan, anything that Farm Bureau does to help farmers out. So with all of the different resolutions and stuff, this is the yearly thing. This is the time that the help comes. This is the time when the choices are made and stuff is renewed and or redone. So I believe that it would help if we had more legislation helping farmers that are in need, or if we had new legislation regarding farmers that are in deep trouble or deep debt or deep anything really, any kind of not quite social, but I think financial help would be a very key thing that Farm Bureau could help with.
I agree with the financial side of things, as we've seen with this year, wet spring, dry summer, wet fall. There's plenty of farmers that still have crops in the ground today that needed to come off a month ago. And unless they can afford crop insurance to cover that sort of loss, most of them can't cover it out of pocket. So farming in general, even something we can't change with the weather, is just so stressful that we need to have these steps and measures in place to help them help us, and it's really important that we push and let them know that there are people who are here for them. Maybe we could set up an anonymous phone talk just for someone to talk to. Someone, it's just sometimes that's all it takes.
Like a farmer hotline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think getting that personal connection in there is a really big thing. Like I know in our small town we have all the farmers go out for coffee every morning, so it kickstarts their day to a good start.
Yeah, and Kylie, you mentioned that you saw your dad coming home and he had issues, and how looking back now as an adult, how could you have maybe helped him or prevented him if what Cody mentioned as a resource was available? If you could call a hotline and say, hey, I noticed that there's a farmer in my community that needs a little bit of help. What are some resources that you can give me that I can give them so that I can be of assistance to that person?
Yeah, I guess personally I would have liked to just know about this a lot sooner because, I just thought, oh, maybe he just had a bad day, but one bad day turned into 2 and then 3.
Of course.
It's a snowball effect. So I think, having this hotline that farmers could call just to talk to somebody every day would be very vital.
Or going back to my point about we don't have to reinvent the wheel to create a new program or a new organization to help combat this issue. There is the National Suicide Hotline. How about we, as American Farm Bureau and Collegiate members, we sit down with them in their training and let them know there is a whole other demographic that when you are going in for your training, you're maybe learning about teenagers specifically, you're maybe learning about more specific demographics. But what seems to be left behind is the rural America. what is a stressor that's going on in rural America that may not be covered in your psychology classes. Being able to train our first responders, pretty much, in how to deal with rural American issues.
I think another big thing is getting the information in front of farmers. So we know that, as John said, not a lot of farmers are going to go up to somebody and say, hey, I need help with this. They're typically older men who are a bit stubborn and set in their ways. So how can we as Farm Bureau and college students get information in front of people, in front of farmers, in a way that puts it in front of them so that it's there if they need it, but it's not really pushing it. So it's offering education material and then hoping that eventually somebody will help them take the bait to get the help that they need.
Well, even something as simple as, say, a little crisis pamphlet at your district farm bureau, where when they go in there and they see the lady at the desk, they talk like they normally do. And this pamphlet's here, and they might catch it out of the corner of their eye, but it's not something you're pressing saying, hey, if you need help, here you go.
Absolutely.
Then they don't feel pressured, but at the same time, they know it's there.
Or even a placemat at a coffee, at your local coffee shop. I mean, all the farmers in Ida, they all go there every single morning. There's 20 of them. They all shoot the breeze. It's like, we call it the gossip table. They all love it. But I mean, if all those little placemats or any kind of little number anywhere on a bulletin, if you pass it every single day, I feel as if you're going to notice something eventually. Something changes. If you put something up and you read it every single day and they just kind of memorize the number, they never have to take anything, they never have to do anything. All they have to do is type in a number whenever they're alone. I feel like that'd be a very good way to do that as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you have a lot to say on this topic. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I kind of think that the education and outreach needs to happen organically. It needs to happen in a way that doesn't feel like we're pushing mental health, or it doesn't feel like a bunch of kids that don't know nothing about what they're talking about or trying to talk to you about something, you know? It's got to sound like we understand, you know, what we're dealing with. We understand the very specific issues that farmers have aside from every other industry. We understand why farmers, you know, as you said, have a 4 times higher rate of, you know, suicide, and it's very intense. But there's with crazy different numbers like this, there has to be very specific reasons, and we should be able to identify those reasons and, you know, be able to communicate and connect with the farmer on those exact reasons.
Well, and I wanted to talk about statistics very briefly, because there was a study done by the CDC about the 3 Fs, which would be farm workers, forestry, and fishing. Now, this showed that there was a 36% suicide rate in here, and in that group of the 3 Fs, and that was interpreted as even farm owners, but they are considered to be in a farm management position, not in one of those 3 Fs. It's a completely different position. So when we're doing our research and, you know, figuring out how we're going to attack this, we really need to focus on accuracy so we know exactly what we're attacking.
Cody, a statistic that really caught my eye as I prepared for this discussion today was that suicide rate among farmers is 2 times the suicide rate of that of veterans in America. And that one sentence alone caught not only my attention, but then it got me talking to my family members and my college students and people that I work with. You know, when I asked my boss if I could be here today, she said, oh, what are you going to talk about? And that one statistic, along with the statistic that you read, made her go, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like that's a really big deal. This is something that we should really be focusing on. It was an attention grabber. And it's negative attention at this point, but it's something that can really help us get the society and the nation to realize the crisis that we're really in.
I think that this ties right back into farmers always keeping to themselves. I feel like this is one of the best kept statistics. It's just that it's so terrible that nobody wants to talk about it.
Yes.
But yet it needs to be done so it can be talked about in a normal manner, not just with a specialized therapist in front of you. It needs to be done in a way that doesn't seem pushed, as we talked about as well, but a way that they can take in easily without having to be forced to do anything.
Also, if we had like a therapist that was willing to go into the home, I know that my goal is to be a 3rd-generation crop insurance agent. We always go and visit the farmer. The farmer doesn't come and visit us. Mm-hmm. I think that's key because they're busy. They have things to do. They have crops to get out of the ground. So I think having someone who's going to go to their house and not make them go out and feel like they're having to do something they don't want to do is very important.
I think also creating that strong, utilizing a bond that we already have with our local Farm Bureau agents,
Yeah.
with our local Farm Bureau board members. Maybe a few times a year or a couple times a year, you can send your county Farm Bureau representatives to somewhere and be trained on what to look for when trying to see mental health issues in somebody. Being able to train them in giving out that help, or being able to recognize it early so that it doesn't snowball into that dark depression that we're worried about.
Absolutely. I think that you bring up a really good point there.
So in terms of what your solution identifies, it would be to educate the Farm Bureau members and delegates for our communities, and kind of maybe either have them handle the mental health awareness or handing out materials. Maybe there could be, a monthly booklet or something, getting them together, and then kind of maybe having a one-stop shop at the end where a farmer could, get a hold of, the main part of the resources once they used their delegate and they had the initial steps.
Or even just like electing a mental health professional
Yeah.
to communicate that between the agriculture industry and the rest of society. Having that mental health professional communicate with personal farmers in their own area, being able to communicate that strong bond and be able to build it so that it's beneficial for the future.
I think a monthly newsletter would be very efficient.
That's,
I think the other thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Pens down, please, and you may begin your closing statement, voluntary order.
So to recap on today's discussion, the question was, how can Farm Bureau help the county, state, and or national crisis when it comes to mental health? And I think that we had a lot of really great ideas. We talked about pamphlets, brochures. We talked about opening a mental health line, having a psychologist visit family farms to give consultation to people who are in need, just lending out a helping hand to really say, hey, we're here for you, in a way that doesn't insist that people need the help that sometimes it's a little bit too hard to ask for. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you guys so much for your time.
Alright, so in closing, I liked the fact that Michael and Alyssa really mentioned about using resources that we already have. Nobody likes to spend extra money when we could, allocate funds to be used in a better way. Another idea that is, very interesting would be like the education of having the brochures, pamphlets, just making sure that it's very close to home and that it's easily accessible without being pushy. I think we had a lot of great ideas here, and the next thing I see is just moving on with those ideas. So thank you.
I want to start off by thanking the moderator, the timekeeper, the audience, and overall my fellow colleagues for this great discussion today. I think there's 3 big takeaways that we got from this discussion. The first one being that we need to build off our existing programs like Michael and Alyssa said. The second one being that we need to get farmers connected with each other and information without pushing them. And the final one being to create that personal connection, whether it be a therapist or a psychologist come into their home and help them. Thank you.
I feel like I had a very productive discussion with my peers. I learned a lot from you guys. You guys had some statistics that I was not able to find. As we all probably realize, this is a difficult subject to research. It's swept under the carpet very well. But I feel like catering to the farmer is our best shot at this. They're busy, they're stressed out, they have plenty of things to do, their plate is full. So the best we can do to help them and make it easier for them, but also let them know that we care and we're there for them, it will be a very efficient way to combat this problem.
in closing, I want to thank everyone here today. We had a great discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I loved it all. We talked for a long time about good stuff, and specifically for the solutions to this problem that we spoke about was education and outreach. But more specifically than that was doing it in a way that's non-intrusive to the farmer or to their way of life. Doing it in a way that they can say, take hold of it, take charge of their life, and do it in a way that nobody else has to know. People think of going to a therapist as being crazy talk, but it's really not. It's a basic human need, and I feel like we discussed it very well, and I feel like in the future, moving on and forward in this, it is up to us to give our farmers, our peers, and everyone else their outreach they need. Thank
This is a topic that really has to be talked about now, because if not now, it's not ever going to happen. And much like what John said during his opening statement, with agriculture being the backbone of society, we cannot afford to lose more of our industry due to suicide or depression. And with Alyssa bringing up the statistic, that really shocked me. It shocked me to my core about farmer suicide being twice as high than veteran suicide. Some of the solutions that we came up with was recognizing the stressors that are put onto farmers and being able to train our county and regional representatives to recognize those stressors and recognize signs of depression or anything like that, and also creating pamphlets for the farmers themselves to pick up, and utilizing new and old organizations and programs, such as me and Alyssa were talking about, and being able to build off of those so that we can train what we currently have to cater to our needs. Thank you.